I've been tormented by these words for the last 40 years. When I least expected it, they finally started coming true. Part 2. Written by you/unalloyed Saint Trina. This will be a 4-part series. Part 2 for the story will be linked in the description. I needed to say it. Agony attempted to sew my lips shut, but in the end, I needed to know those words meant nothing to her. For the first time in my life, I was the one reciting the prophecy. When the end approaches, it will not rise from the earth, nor will it be wearing a cloak or wielding a scythe. Death will arrive from a foreign land, bearing eyes like brilliant jades. As I spoke, I watched her pupils dilate, and her features became swollen with dread. How the fuck do you know those words? In the catastrophic aftermath of Lucy's question, our passage through time seemed to have slowed to a crawl. Despite feeling as though an atom bomb had detonated in our home, the rest of the world appeared unaffected. The morning sun kept on soaking our kitchen in warm light, and the birds dawdling about our front porch kept on singing. All the while, we remained trapped within that moment of realization. Like a pair of primordial mosquitoes fossilized within a block of gleaming amber, we found ourselves stuck in time, immobilized by the thick layers of disbelief and confusion. I let the question linger around us unanswered. What was there for me to say? Look at it like this. There are only 2 reasons I would have those words memorized. Either we had stumbled upon an impossibly coincidental overlap in our life histories, or I was the one who had tormented her with the prophecy for nearly 2 decades, which is how long her harassment lasted. She quickly ruled out the latter, leaving only one explanation. Not only had we both suffered at the hands of that prophecy, but in our 23 years of marriage, it had remained unsaid. The odds of it felt dizzyingly astronomical. That's what really paralyzed us, I think. The infinitesimally small chance that this mutual history was a coincidence. And if it wasn't a coincidence, that meant there was a purpose behind our mirrored ordeals. And God, that mortified me. A loud thunk shattered our joint stasis, causing Lucy and me to realign chronologically with the rest of the world. I shot up and swung my body towards the noise. My wife slid back from the table, reflexively cocooning her face with both of her arms as protection from the unseen threat. By my estimate, the crash had originated from the square window above our dishwasher. The glass looked intact, but there was a new haziness at its center. A smudge where the unknown projectile had made contact. Lucy's eyes peeked out from her makeshift barrier. With her arms still up in a protective position, nervous brown irises flickered between me and the window, silently urging me to take the lead and find out what had happened. I've always known my wife to be skittish, and I assumed it was her natural temperament, but now I'm not so sure. Our relationship had been fundamentally reshaped by the discovery of our shared trauma. I knew how the prophecy's torment had affected me, but how had it affected Lucy? In an attempt at bravery, I tiptoed over to the window, pressing my face against the surface to determine if anything was laying below it. To my horror, with the glass fogging up from my rising hyperventilation, I saw something thrashing against the side of our home, a mangled ball of bright scarlet plumage, accented by darker splatters of crimson blood. A cardinal had careened into our window and was now on the edge of death from its injuries. The same window that Ari, our green-eyed, chestnut-haired new neighbor, had waved at us through only 10 minutes prior. It wasn't alone either. Looking outside, hundreds of birds littered our suburban street, just not where you'd expect them. They weren't mid-flight or perched on nearby trees. Instead, myriads hopped aimlessly on the neighborhood's lawns and asphalt. Down the street, a Jeep was laying on its horn, trying to get a cluster of the grounded animals to clear from the street. Judging by the state of its front tires, newly adorned with crumpled feathers and boggy viscera, the driver may have already accidentally run over a few of the songbirds, rightfully assuming that they would fly out of the way before being crushed. But none of them were flying. Not a single, solitary one of them was airborne. The words, "angel's wings clipped," quietly curled into my ears, causing me to gasp. I hadn't noticed Lucy creep up behind me, her head cautiously peering over my right shoulder as she muttered the phrase. A whispered prophecy, long forgotten, was now materializing in front of me, emerging from the catacombs of my memories like the vengeful undead. In a moment of uncharacteristic decisiveness, I purposed our next move. We need to go talk to Shep. Forget about the car. We'll probably have better luck biking to the station. Under normal circumstances, the off-season leaves our town rather quiet. The population of permanent residents is about 200. Summer, in comparison, attracts a decisive influx of tourists, particularly families, parents looking to park their kids somewhere on the boardwalk so they can drink wine coolers on the beach. But once those transients clear out, it's back to just us permanents. We're a tight-knit bunch. Part of that comes from a shared love of the town. Most grew up around the area, visited the beach frequently when we were young. A lot of us found ourselves drawn back to the shore for good by its cool climate, magnetic nostalgia, and sense of community. The other key ingredient in our town's cohesiveness is that we all think alike, as much as any large group of humans can, at least. There can't be any religious tensions if we're all similarly devout agnostics. 90% of us don't have kids, and the kids that did come from our community's gene pool are already fully grown and out in the world on their own. Because of that, our town doesn't have a lot of volatile, young blood bubbling about, at least during the winter months. Limited spikes in sex hormones translates to limited hot-headed conflict, and we like it that way. None of us have the energy to down half a bottle of tequila while committing festive adultery as revenge for our partner for getting a birthday. We have our minor squabbles about politics here and there, but that's about as far as it goes. And on the rare occasion that there actually is conflict, we have Shepherd, Langley. The police station lies at the very north end of town, though labeling it a station is very generous. Situated as the last stop on the boardwalk before it tapers off into sand, the unlabeled one-story building encrusted with peeling seafoam paint chips isn't much to write home about. The inside contains a single jail cell, a rifle rack that rarely actually has a firearm on it, and Shep's rickety wooden desk. But like I mentioned, when it's the off-season, there isn't exactly a need for policing. Sheriff Shepard Langley, in a twist of irony, stands in stark contrast to his dilapidated, uninspired surroundings. Given the description of the station, I think you'd imagine our sheriff to be some ill-equipped, donut-totting weakling, and that would certainly fit better with the aesthetic. Thankfully, that isn't Shep. A room of a dozen Hollywood writers couldn't have designed a more stereotyped lawman. He's a gaunt but imposing, straight-shooting, no-nonsense type of guy, always wearing boots with a bolo tie and soft-spoken to the point where it could be misinterpreted as complexity or mystique. In other words, he was exactly what we needed. Someone to counterbalance the downright absurdity that Lucy and I were experiencing. Bursting into the station, we found Shep crouched behind his desk, fiddling with the mechanics of a loose drawer. Instantly, we had his undivided attention. He seemed to sense our distress before he could look up to see it stitched across our faces. The sheriff stood, dusted himself off, and placed a weathered screwdriver into his pocket. We were huffing and puffing from our furious bike ride over, so he spoke first. "Meg, Lucy, everything all right? I get the sense that this isn't a social call." My wife and I exchanged uncertain glances as the door thumped shut behind us. In the delirious mania that resulted from that morning's escalating revelations, we had forgotten to discuss how to actually approach Shep with our concerns. I mean, where the fuck would we even start? Lucy, a better liar and improviser than I'll ever be, came up with something in a pinch. "Shep, we have been receiving some really strange calls to the house." He tilted his head, as two thin gray eyebrows rose into his forehead, painting a look of confusion on his wrinkled face. Clearly, he was interested in what information would link some really strange calls and the two of us blustering into the station like a human monsoon. "Do tell, ma'am." A leaden gulp thumped from inside my wife's throat, and then she continued, "Well, essentially, someone's been calling day and night, saying the same thing, over and over again. You know that new guy, Ari, moved to town after being hired to help manage the water refinery? Well, whoever is calling keeps saying that, that Ari might be dangerous. It's not the easiest thing to explain." The sound of the station door swinging open cut Lucy off, and a familiar nasal tone voice began spilling into the room. "Oh, Sheriff, you won't believe it, the birds today. What a nuisance." The stocky woman nearly trampled me as she entered, so caught up in her carefully calibrated melodrama that she became blind to her surroundings. At the last second, I reflexively moved out of the collision course. The cornucopia of marble beads, crystals, and metal charms she wore around her neck clattered as she walked past me. It took her a moment to realize that she had intruded on another conversation. Barbara was here. Fucking goddamned Barbara. She turned her head from side to side, saw us, and then reluctantly trotted towards a chair in the corner opposite to Shep's desk that effectively functioned as the station's waiting room. "Ladies, I apologize for the interruption. I'm a bit wound up today." Barb is wound up 365 days a year, without fail. Her perpetual tizzy is one true constant in a world of ever-changing variables. "Please, continue. I can wait." She sat down, folded her arms onto her lap, and stared ahead, statuesque and unmoving. Out of all the denizens in our pleasant, cooperative town, Barb is the one exception. She's living proof that zealotry and dogma are by no means exclusive to the religious among us. Even atheist, supposedly nature-loving Reiki experts can be destructive, malignant narcissists. Shep quietly nodded in Barb's direction, cataloging her existence, and then turned his stoic gaze back on us. Hesitantly, I picked up where Lucy left off, eager to get to the meat of it all. "Listen, Shep, I'm going to iterate to you what the voice keeps saying, and you can decide how concerned you are. Sound good?" He nodded again, and I continued. "When death approaches, it will not rise from the earth, nor will it be wearing a cloak or wielding a scythe. Death will arrive from a foreign land, bearing eyes like brilliant jades and hair the color of chestnuts, and it will broadcast only peace. In truth, it does not know what it delivers, but it will deliver it all the same. Little by little, step by step, it conjures apocalypse, a stranded leviathan, angels' wings clipped, a curtain of night under a bejeweled sky, the demise of a king amidst a sweeping tempest. Finally, an inferno, wrathful and pure, spreading from sea to sea, cleansing mankind from this world. Listen closely, child. Once the inferno ignites, there will be no halting death's steady march. Excavate its jades from their hallowed sockets, and their visions of apocalypse will cease. Leave them be, and you will bear witness to the conflagration that devours humanity. Tell no one what you heard here today." As I was finishing detailing the prophecy to Shep, Lucy curved her body towards mine, placing a gentle, reassuring hand on my shoulder. Her newly patronizing tone, however, immediately soured the soothing gesture. "Sweetheart, I think you got one part wrong. I believe the voice has been saying, 'Listen closely, child. Once the inferno ignites, there will be no halting death's steady march. Dissect a portion of their liver, like the eagle to Prometheus, and their apocalypse will crumble.'" Just then, the phone on Shep's desk rang. He waved a single index finger in front of us, and then picked up the line, silently asking us to pause. In our haste, not only had we arrived at the station without a definitive plan, Lucy and I also didn't make sure our prophecies 100% matched. We knew the first few sentences did, but we wrongly assumed that would mean that all of it would be identical. Lucy, what the fuck are you talking about? That's definitely not right. I muttered under my breath, trying to make the words only audible to her. Barb was a notorious snoop and a known instigator of rumors. I wasn't looking to have her interpret my tone as marital discord. It was ammunition I sure as shit was not willing to give to her freely, at least. That's what mine was, Meg. At the arcade, from the whispers, in the letters. Does it really not match what you were told? I was shell-shocked. Her recollection of the prophecy was nearly interchangeable, except where it seemed to matter most. Somehow, we were given different instructions on how to avert apocalypse. Before I could come up with a response, Barb mumbled something behind us that made my blood run cold. Actually, you're both wrong. It ends up with, sever their dominant hand, loosening their grip on apocalypse. Across the room, Shep slammed the phone down on the receiver. Sorry, y'all. This will have to wait. There's a whale carcass that washed up by 44th. Well, at least they think it's dead. I need to go take a look. Have to decide whether or not we need environmental to come out too. 3 words spun in my head, causing overwhelming vertigo. Those words were then joined by what Barb uttered, and I felt myself passing out, a stranded leviathan. If someone subjected Barb to the prophecy as well, there's no way any of this is a coincidence. How many more of us are there then? This is the end of part 2. Part 3 will be uploaded next week on Friday. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe or follow.